It's Sunday, September 29th. This is Throwing Light. I'm LTJ Reeves, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. Tonight, I've got one of my leather brothers from my IMO class on here, Tyler Lansdell. But before I get to him, I just want to remind everybody that Throwing Light was a collaboration that started with Ashwell. I still consider Ashwell to be a part of this experience. If you want to learn more about Ashwell's sexual health and wellness, please visit ashwellatx.org to learn about the services that they provide to the local Austin community. They also have ways for you to donate and to give back to the community. They even have a food bank. So if you could, go over to ashwellatx.org, learn about them, and contribute to our community. All right, y'all, let's get started. Tyler, what's up? How are you?
Hi, I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's been a pretty all right weekend. I've been working pretty much all throughout it, but it's really nice to relax and have a little chat with you. I'm very thankful for this opportunity.
Little chat it shall be. So, Tyler, we haven't been physically around each other since May, since IML. Why don't you tell us a little
Yes,
bit about you? You know, what your role is. You're getting ready to have your step down.
yes.
Um,
I am the current Mr. Twin Cities Leather. I stepped down in a little over a month now. I'm a boot black in my community. I'm a member of a couple different clubs, as well as sort of like a connective tissue for our community here in Minneapolis called Minnesota Leather Pride. Um, yeah, it's been actually pretty laid back since May, not including Pride Month. Pride Month was very busy. The parade was incredible, and being able to be out and about with a bunch of members of my community and my family has been absolutely incredible, especially because it was my first time being able to be out for Pride.
So, you are Mr. Twin Cities Leather. You're in Minnesota,
Yep.
and we're talking about St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Yes, St. Paul and Minneapolis. I live sort of like in an inner ring suburb of Minneapolis. Like downtown is like maybe like a 15-minute drive. St. Paul is a little bit farther, but there's definitely some stuff that happens from time to time out in that area. But a lot of the leather activity happens in Minneapolis proper.
That would make sense. I've been to Minneapolis. It's been a while. I was visiting Minneapolis like 2005 or something like that. I thought it was so.
Okay.
I mean, that's a long time, and things change because I'm here in Austin, and it is nothing like it was back in 2005. But I just remember it being a very beautiful city, very clean.
Oh yeah, it's great. I very much enjoy living in Minneapolis. Our public transit is great. I've been able to go to a lot of different places because of that and not have to take my car. The skyways in downtown are really cool and a really great solution to the fact that we actually have winter here. Because I'm originally from Southern California, so the concept of things getting cold and snow are were pretty foreign to me until I moved here probably about 2.5 years ago. But yeah, I love Minneapolis, and I'm very glad that I moved here. And a lot of my more formative, um, the most formative part of my leather journey has been occurring here.
Okay, that makes sense. I do want to talk a little bit about IML. Before we get there, I do want to kind of zone in a little bit more on the fact that you are Mr. Twin Cities Leather. So St. Paul and Minneapolis share.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, if you live in like the Twin Cities area, you're able to compete. And actually, we're still taking applications for probably the next couple of days or so. Which I'm very excited about that contest weekend, and uh, especially night one, we have an event called Flogapalooza. It's a huge fundraiser and an opportunity to try out a couple different things that our community has to offer. It's always super packed, incredibly popular. And then our contest is the following evening.
That's cool. So let's kind of go back a little bit. Through your title year, we had the preparation and we did experience the IML experience. How was IML for you as Mr. Twin Cities Leather?
Oh, I would
Yeah.
say there are two very different answers here. The diplomatic answer is I learned a lot about myself, and it's certainly a very challenging experience. You don't it's one of those things where you get told about how hard it's going to be, and you don't really realize how hard it's going to be until you actually do it. It's like being told not to put your hand on a hot stove. Like, sure, that's common sense that you don't do that, but you don't know why you don't do that until you put your hand on a hot stove. But the honest answer is, it was rough, very, very rough. I thought that generally speaking, I represented myself fairly well, and then Sunday night hit. Um, I I got off stage, and I'm not afraid to admit it, I was falling apart. Because it confirmed a lot of things that I had been told for well over a year and a half, before I ever got to that point, even before I competed for Mr. Twin Cities Leather, as someone that is younger, as someone who is still pretty green by comparison to a lot of members of our community. Um, I would, I would normally get like one of two kinds of responses. The first is very, go for it, very encouraging. And then the other was a bit more, um, I don't know exactly how to put it, but very, considering where you currently are in the community, they will, like, someone that's judging will take one look at you and see, the fact that you're young, the fact that your leather resume isn't quite as filled as some other potential competitors, which, considering I've been in the community for a little less than 3 years, basically my entire leather journey could fit on that IML application. But suffice to say, they'll look at all of that and say, you're not ready yet. And I still did it anyway. And that night, it felt like they were vindicated. And it kind of hurt, because I wanted that top 20 more than breath. I wanted to be able to, get up there and say that, as someone who is younger, as someone who often goes into leather spaces, being the youngest person in the room, um, I belong here. And it certainly hurt, but I still got that opportunity to speak my piece, and admittedly make some amends because I was not kind that night. Um, but and I was able to sort of turn it around at the very end when, all of our IML siblings went out to sidetrack for show tunes, and I was able to end on a note that took me out of my head a little bit, but that weekend left me with a lot to ruminate on, and I was a bit too introspective for my liking for probably like a month or so afterwards.
Let me tell you this, brother. You are age is nothing but a number. I was there. I experienced the emotion that you were feeling. I interacted with you,
Oh
but
yeah.
we all could not be international.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
get it.
yeah, exactly.
I didn't
Yeah.
make top 20 either, Tyler. But what I want to tell you is that you had a moment and you learned very quickly that your reactions and how you were feeling needed to be controlled. You apologize. You apologize
Yeah.
to me. You apologize to everybody else. You prove that you're much more mature. I don't know how many people, Tyler, that can recognize that they made a mistake and fix it very quickly. You had
And
an opportunity to reflect, and I think you prove that you are more than your age.
and admittedly, like, especially in that moment, I kind of knew that I needed to separate myself from, from everybody else, and try and keep what I was dealing with sort of self-contained. Um, I didn't go back on the bus with the rest of everybody else. I didn't go out on stage, which admittedly was a bit of a mistake because I should have been supporting those that made it into top 20. I'll acknowledge that. But also, I recognize that I could not do that in the state that I was in. And they didn't deserve that. Hell, the people that didn't make top 20 did not deserve that. The handlers did not deserve that. It was it was very unbecoming, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. And I like I said, I've had months to sort of reflect on that and what that and how I navigate a lot of the relationships that I have with people. So like I said in my diplomatic answer, I learned a lot. Um, and the great thing about not being podium is, it can always happen again sometime, but certainly not in the near future, that's for sure.
I just want to reiterate, I am so proud of you, Tyler. The fact that you even have this conversation in front of people attests to your strength and your character, and that you're a strong person. I know you went through that. I know the feelings, but I think you are making more of an impact than you realize. Just by going through these emotions and recognizing for what they are. This is the first
Yeah,
interview that I've done with one of my brothers that has. I mean, this is a very good. This is a good thing that you're doing, talking about this, Tyler, because we haven't had this conversation before with anyone and how it feels, what it's like, and to make mistakes. But at the same thing, we went there with you. We love you the same. And I do want
yeah.
to see you. I want to see you. I want to see your growth. I want to see you excel.
Yeah, and I'm not afraid to acknowledge that I screwed up a little bit. I'm not afraid to admit that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm willing to acknowledge so on something as public as this. Like I think far too often, especially as leaders, there is a very high expectation of always excelling, especially as title holders. We're supposed to be the best of what our community has to offer. But fun fact, we're also human beings. We are people that can sometimes do some really, I'm not going to say out of pocket, but things that people don't expect, or things that seem a bit out of character from the presentation that we give to others as representatives of our community. We're so human, and I'm not afraid to acknowledge when I screw up.
And hey, and that's why you are a leader in the position you're in. All right. So after coming back and bouncing back from IML, okay. So
Yeah.
what for me, it was so important for me to just to keep going. I think for me, I didn't want to process IML right away. I think I just kind of like covered myself in work just so I could still feel, because like I said, I didn't make top 20 either. I just wanted to feel worth something,
Yeah.
in that moment. Even though really the placements do. I can't, I feel like if anything, the IML enhanced the journey that I'm on at this point.
Yeah.
What has been some of the things that you really wanted to keep focusing on in the community?
Um, for me, it's putting myself out there as often as possible and being sort of present for other people, especially for those that are younger in my community. Because there's definitely a generational divide kind of in general, and it's definitely hard with my line of work, but especially going out to bars like late on the weekends or whatever, but also making sure that I am continually seated at the table as sort of a constant reminder of I'm very much still here. When I came back from IML, it was very much sort of business as usual. Club meeting this week, MNLP meeting next week, socials, potential bar nights, so on and so forth. Um, and maybe a little bit of um, me time and personal experiences here and there, especially around, over the past couple weeks. But I think in general, for me at least, it's still very important that I continue to show up and to continue to show that I'm very much still here and I'm not going anywhere.
Right on, right on, right on. So you sorry, both of our step downs are coming up, and you have been in this title for almost a year now. What are some
Yeah.
differences between how you view yourself as when you first got the title and now that you're about to give it up?
I think at first, um, like at first I would say that I was I was definitely a lot more unsure of myself, of potentially putting myself out there in the way that's required as part of being a title holder. Um, but I think a lot of what helped was sort of burying my nose in contest prep of memorizing my speech verbatim, memorizing the stuff I needed to do for my talent, getting sort of all of my ducks in a row, and then going out to do it. But now, especially having conversations like these and having conversations with members of my community, I kind of see myself a little bit more in the way that other people do. um, one of the things that I sort of struggle with is not really like my self-image and the image that other people seem to have about me and about sort of my presence, if that makes any sense, are two very different things that not really being able to see the impact of what I do. Because to me, I just see myself as somebody that goes out to bars sometimes. I'm no fundraising workhorse. I am not well versed in the bureaucracy that comes with leadership. Those are not things that are really in my wheelhouse. People are. Going out is, being able to, live the leather life that I've been viewing online for nearly a decade and being able to do so proudly and unapologetically, that's in my wheelhouse. And I think it's really important that I'm kind of finally in a position where I can acknowledge all of those things and say I am not any lesser of a potential community leader because of whatever gaps in my armor I have. That just means I have to uplift those who do have those skill sets, and I'd like to think that for the most part I do that. It's definitely something I'm still trying to work on, especially utilizing my platform a little bit better, but I I recognize where I stand and what my responsibility is in uplifting my community.
I think that's great. You have a great ability of reflecting and kind of thinking about this. You seem to think a lot.
Well, yeah,
how do you get out of your head though?
honestly, that's something I wouldn't be able to tell you. The very last question that I had during my interview was about what is one challenge you had during your title year and how'd you get past it? And literally, um, like awakening a sleeper cell, I said imposter syndrome. And that was the question I didn't get to finish because, truth be told, I don't have an answer for that. It kind of happens on its own. It comes and goes in waves almost. It is no try and get out of your head. It's write it out, and eventually I'll return back to center, which is not healthy. I'll acknowledge that it is not healthy at all. And that's definitely something that I need to work on for sure is um trying to get out of my head a lot more. But there definitely has been moments at some of the events that I've been to sort of post IML that I was kind of shocked by how out of my head I was. And I'm very grateful that I kind of had that moment of clarity of, oh, so this is what it's like to, you know, actually be able to enjoy things without having to feel like I'm on pins and needles, I guess,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
at war with myself.
Let me tell you this. I am at the end just like you are with title, and I feel like I'm ready to have the pressure off of me. In a sense of thinking that I need to navigate a certain way. I'm ready just to kind of take it off and just be LTJ and not have to you know no IML prep that's going on like
Yeah, and something interesting is sort of my perspective is actually kind of different. You know, I may not have the sash anymore, but I still have this. I still have this. I still have this very snazzy t-shirt too. Um, you know, just because I'm no longer the current Mr. Twin Cities Leather, that does not necessarily, at least in my opinion, absolve me of, not having the sort of expectations of being a leader in our community. The same way, like, you know, the same way that, after IML, like that is not the end of a chapter, if you will. This is this is the beginning of a chapter, truly, that, you know, in sort of answering the question of, okay, now what? And for me, at least, it's continuing to serve my community, continuing to get out there and learn as much as I can. And um, because, to quote an article that actually one of our judges shared pretty recently, my good old days are right now. I need to ensure that I am making the most of every second that I have to become the person that I had only, seen from the other side of a screen for so long.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, Tyler. All right, so Tyler, we're getting close towards the end of the show, and
Okay.
before we get there, I want to ask you a question. So do you think in your lifetime, after some growth, do you think that you'll go for another title?
I could see that. I could see that happening. I think it would, you know, I've already been asked for to potentially compete for another one, like in late February, March. That's something that I'm still very much ruminating on, especially because of the implications that a title outside of my community would have on my local community. Because we'll still have a Mr. Twin Cities Leather, and then introducing another title in addition to our personal community fundraising efforts for various projects that we have locally, trying to sort of understand the role that that plays in our sort of day-to-day community operations. But yeah, like I could definitely see myself you know, pursuing titles, and very much like continuing to try and put myself out there, because that's really the only way that we grow, is to continually put ourselves out there and continue to push ourselves. Fortune favors the bold.
People ask me if I'm going to go for a not like prior to like when I got back from Army, I was like, yeah, like I feel like I didn't represent myself fully. But like, the thing is that, I'm only 2 years old in the community. You're older than me. Coming out the gate and having a title, that's like not the norm, Tyler. Like it's kind of going to
Oh
let,
yeah,
don't you think?
I
Like a
was I was
leather boot
I was
camp.
talking to someone at AKW, and I was telling them about sort of my journey thus far, and they were genuinely shocked that I was in this position, so soon after, not just my first time with the man, not just, my first time involving leather, but quite literally my first time ever. Um, and that was, that was very sort of take it definitely took me aback a little bit, because yeah, we're doing pretty well if, like, we're able to do what we've done in such a short time period. Grass doesn't grow under our boots. We're continuously on the move. We're continuously trying to push ourselves and grow. And I definitely see that sort of mindset really helping to push the community forward.
Awesome. So, Tyler, this is my question that I ask everybody on the show towards the end. Sometimes I'm dramatic about it, but I'm not going to be tonight. So, this is my question. So, is there any
Okay.
aspect of our community that you think that we are not shedding light on or enough light on?
Oh, yes. And for that, I will need to tell you a little story about a man that I've met online, because most of my relationships are online. He was someone I met through Twitter, and he and I established a pretty strong rapport. He would talk about how he's been amassing this collection of gear that he takes very diligent care of. He's been doing a whole bunch of archival work of a lot of vintage leather media. And oh, by the way, he's 19. I think that there is a very strong portion of our younger community that are incredibly passionate about our culture and often get sort of sidelined and almost invisible. Uh, from my personal experience, being in rooms with people bare minimum twice my age, at best, I'm set dressing for another man's nostalgia, especially considering I dress pretty traditionally leather-wise, full cow, very bluff. And at worst, it's I'm not going to mention my age because I know it's going to make people groan and roll their eyes, or you
Oh,
know,
no, no.
and 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 or another thing that or alternatively, tell me that they can smell the baby formula on my breath.
Oh my God.
Um, which admittedly is really funny, but I think the point still stands is that there are more and more of my generation entering our community who have had a diving board into an entire culture continuously in the palm of their hand for well over a decade now. That they've learned that this is exactly where they're meant to be, and that they need guidance, they need mentorship, they need to be welcomed. And I guess to sort of extrapolate from that, that also includes folks well into their 40s, 50s, 60s who have always had these feelings, but because of the internet, they finally know that they're not alone. I think we need to continue to stay mindful about how we approach newcomers and give them the world, because that's how I got where I am. If I didn't walk into my first leather bar, um, getting side-eyed and getting judged about how, you know, on whether or not this was merely cosplay. Um, I was given the world, and that's the only reason I am where I am. And I expect that for not just myself, but all of us, truly.
All right, that was beautiful, Tyler. Thank you so much for a
Aw,
fantastic
shucks.
interview. You did fantastic. You did awesome.
Aw, shucks.
Look for- I look forward to what you do. I'm always here. You can always reach out to me. This is the beginning of the journey, Tyler. So who's know where we're going to
Oh
be
yeah.
now? But I know that you're in it to win it just as much as I'm in it to win it, and we're going to be here helping each other as long as we can. You know,
We've got decades of leather life.
of course.
I'm wearing my boots until I need orthotics in them, I swear.
Let's do it. This is our opportunity just to go
Hell
for
yeah.
it. All right,
All right.
y'all. Well, that brings us to the end of Throwing Light. I want to thank you again, Tyler, for showing your honest self. You're authentic. I appreciate telling the truth of what you are and what means to you because we have not even talked about this since
Oh
it
yeah.
happened, and I think this is a great conversation to have with
Yeah.
the community. So I appreciate it so much, and thank you so much, Tyler. Okay.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all. Well, that brings us to the end. This has been Throwing Light, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. See y'all tonight. I mean, see y'all later.
Bye bye now.